Salute, YouTube. Sorry about that. This is really pissing me off. And Pretty Monita, New York Queen, I don't either. I don't blame you. I don't know what you said that you're saying sorry, but yeah, I don't tolerate that word either. I don't want that shit on here. I don't know how many of my moderators are in here. I know Carlos is. Just please, guys, do me a favor. Keep an eye on it. And I know you do, Carlos. As soon as you see even one of those comments, just block them. Can you? Okay, thank you, JC. I'm going to ask you about that. Can you remove the chats, Carlos, or remove the comments when they're left after you block them? All right, Jeff is here. I'm going to bring him on. Hang on, guys. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, I think one of your commenters is making a point. On your YouTube channel on the back end, you can
Yeah.
actually ban certain words, so that's never a problem for you ever. That's
Is there something I could do now?
yeah, you could. I mean, I'd have to kind of walk you through it on on live, but yeah, you could. There's a back end thing you can go into in your community section on YouTube and just block it.
All right, I'll do that next time. I'm not
Yeah,
going to
I
worry
would
about
I
it
would
now.
say it looks like we got some people in here that are going to get rid of those clowns, but yeah, that's a shame. I've seen that on some channels before. Sad.
Yeah, if it starts again, I'm sure they'll be back. Just please block them. And Carlos said I tried. I asked Carlos to remove the comments. He said I tried. They're using some good software. All right, so let me just let you know, guys. And Jeff has no part of this. I'm not trying to bring Jeff into this. But if you're doing this for John A. Light, I hope you know what you just did. I will spend all day tomorrow trashing him. I might put out 10 videos. I'm going to do tons of research tonight just because of what just happened. And I'm going to make whoever did this very sorry that they did it. So if I was you, I'd stop now. All right, Jeff. So let's keep going. Where were we at? Okay, the Casso thing.
Picasso, yeah.
Sorry, man.
No, it's a mess, man. Hey, listen, I got to deal with this shit sometimes as well. It sucks, but you know, just people just being lame as fuck. But yeah, so yeah, Anthony Cassa, right? So yeah, I think a lot of it had to do with
Yeah,
Gravano, right? You know, the feds, the government, they don't want their star guy being messed around with. You know, he was the guy that they put on front center stage to be the guy. He was going to bring everybody down, and Castro kind of got in the way, and I think tried to devalue him as a witness and whatever. And look, he was also doing things he shouldn't do in prison, right? But yeah, they ripped that thing up, and he died in prison last year.
yeah, and I mean, there's no doubt about it that I think this is where we left off. He was doing, some crazy shit, breaking rules, stuff like that. But what it really comes down to is Sammy, because if they would have been able to call Sammy's testimony into question as far as being a drug dealer and all the stuff he testified that he wasn't, and that Sammy's body count was higher than he said, there's a possibility that John Gotti could have maybe gotten his sentence overturned. I think so, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Casso, we talked earlier about Savage, Cavani Savage. I mean, look, Anthony Casso is a fucking lunatic as well. I mean, this is a guy that went at families also. He attacked the sister of Pete Chiodo and tried to kill her. He's a bad dude also. So, and that's really the whole thing about when you look at the government and their relationship with informants, you're getting in bed with some terrible individuals.
Yeah.
They were willing to forget everything Anthony Castro did, Sam Gravano, all these guys, and say, you know what? We don't like you for sure, but we really don't like this guy. So as long as we don't like you more than another person, if you're willing to talk to us, we'll forgive the fact that you killed 2-3 large families or more, chopped them up, threw them in the ocean. As long as you tell us what that guy did, because we hate him more than we hate you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy. And like I said yesterday when I was talking about this, then they'll let these psychopaths move possibly right next door to you. You know what I mean? They'll just let them re-enter the community like nothing happened. And it's terrifying the way the government allows this.
I think the feds, without informants, they wouldn't make a lot of cases, right? It's that's the way they have such a high end rate because, look, there are guys that are not good criminals and they get caught up and it's easy. But, a lot of these big cases, it's informants, right? So, yeah, I mean, Donald Trump mentioned a few years ago we need to do away with informants and stop doing deals with them, which it'll never happen. But
No, no.
yeah, it's a sick, sad, weird business.
Well, I said before, and I'm a true believer in this only because I have been the subject of investigations. I've been set up by informants. That's where I caught every case I ever caught. And the the thing about them is there's really no such thing as good police work. So cases are made on informants. Informants catch criminals. The police just make the arrest.
I mean, case in point, if you've ever seen the first 48, literally every case they make on there is by them getting someone to say, I was there and saw him do this. Or, like they don't, and those are state police. Those are like local cops. Like they all do it, whether it's local, state, feds. Without informants, it would be a lot tougher to solve crime and solve cases. And you're right. There aren't a lot of good cops, right? We see it on TV or whatever, but that's TV. And there's some really good police. There are really good FBI people, but they're a dime a dozen. There's not many.
Yeah, unfortunately. This I want to ask you about because this part, I don't have the best memory. And when I read Gas Pipe, I was actually incarcerated, and that was a long time ago. So Carlos just made a good point here. Casso talked about a corrupt FBI agent, and they cut him off quick. What? I don't recall that. I know that's part of it, but can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, to be real honest, I don't know much about that myself. That's not something that I've ever come across. And look, I think, when we deal with this genre, there are going to be a lot of things out there that you may read or that people might put out in books or whatever. I think a lot of the issues that Anthony Casso had was A, he did things in prison he shouldn't do, and B, ultimately, Sammy Gravano was the chief rat, right?
Yeah.
They were not going to allow him to be talked about negatively and to really tarnish him and really tarnish his image. They just weren't going to let it happen. Now, I'm not going to say that wasn't true. He did have obviously the connections to the mafia cops, and they literally killed people on behalf of Anthony Casso. Listen, Burton Kaplan also really hurt Anthony Casso as well. Burton Kaplan was a guy that was a stone cold true blue gangster. He wasn't Italian, but he was a tough Jew. He decided he didn't want to go to prison, gave up the mafia cops. Obviously, didn't really hurt Casso necessarily because that Casso had already hurt himself. But all that stuff really, I think, played a part in Casso. I think a lot of it though was Gravano. He really tarnished Gravano's kind of witness stance.
Yeah. There's something else. I was listening to something earlier, and I always I like to talk about the more obscure, like the guys that you don't hear about quite as much.
Yeah, that's my favorite as well.
Yeah, like that's why I always took an interest in Jimmy Calandra and the Bath Avenue crew because they were a vicious bunch.
Gruesome, man.
Yeah, and you didn't. A lot of people didn't know about them until the National Geographic series Inside the American Mob and stuff like that. I think that's why Jimmy does so well on here because the stories are fascinating because this was a group of kids. But what I wanted to ask you about, because I find these two characters very interesting and I don't know that much about them. The book Murder Machine, I haven't read in 20 years. But what do you know about Anthony Center and Joey Testa?
Well, they were friends from young, right? I mean,
and
when Roy DeMeo obviously, kind of ascended to where he was, he kind of created that crew. And Chris Rosenberg was obviously the first person he met. Then he started to meet these different guys, and he met the Gemini twins, they would call them, and they were hitmen. We haven't done our shows yet on those guys. There's not a ton of info out there, but they went out and killed people. I mean, if you know anything about Anthony Casso, he had that gas tax scheme, which Michael Franzese, I know, likes to take credit for it.
Exactly.
Now, he was surely involved. I'm not going to ever tell you he wasn't. But the guy that was actually the innovator of that, Mara Palagula, he actually, the Gemini twins actually killed the guy on behalf of Casso. There was a guy, Vladimir Reznikov. I don't know how much you know about him.
Oh, very much.
Yeah, he was a real lunatic. And he was trying to muscle in and get at Balagula. He was probably a tougher Russian than Balagula was. And the center and Testa actually killed Reznikov at a club that they were meeting at, and yeah, they were farming out and doing stuff for everybody, but they were obviously there when Roy DeMeo was killed, and they're both doing life. There was talk that they were going to get out. I don't know who spread that rumor around. That's ridiculous.
I wouldn't believe that for a second. But yeah, it was a center that when Reznikov was pulling up to the club to get the money from Blagula, center shot him in the back of the head, right?
Yes, they did. They basically set him up and said, look, we'll have the money for you. Just come here.
Yeah.
And he's all ready to go. And he comes to the club and finds out Balagula is not around. And he's going to go and find Balagula and blow his house up probably. But yeah, they got to him at that point. And then Casso said to Balagula, you won't have to deal with no more Russians. They're not going to bother you anymore.
Because a lot of people that hear that story would think that because it was the Gemini twins that Roy DeMeo sent them, but they didn't. In that case, it was a Casso helping. I always pronounce it Murat Blagula. You're probably right, but Casso was helping him out and sent Anthony Center and Joey Testa to kill Vladimir Reznikov.
Yeah, they were doing a ton of work for Lucchese's at that point, and that was after Roy DeMeo was whacked. And look, down the road, obviously they would get jammed up in everything that happened there. But yeah, we did a show on DeMeo. That was as far as a group, I don't think there was a more vicious, deranged group. The DeMeo crew, I mean, it was said they killed up to 200 people. Now we don't know exactly how many, but and you look at the variety of different people they killed. And look, at one point, the DeMeo crew was literally killing. If someone was a pedophile, they were killing them. If they were a rat, they were killing that. Like they were killing all sorts of different folks, and some were obviously valid, like killing the pedophile they killed. That was probably valid, but was valid. But yeah, they were a gruesome group. If you didn't play ball with DeMeo, you had to go. I talked before as well. I've always felt bad for DeMeo's kid, Albert. I don't know if you've ever read his work.
I didn't read his book, but yeah, I know about him.
He's a sad guy. I always felt really bad for him and kind of the things he had to go through. But yeah, the center and Testa were tough, gruesome people, surely.
Yeah. Now, speaking of 200 murders, that brings me to another question, and I'm asking you these things because I know you have so much knowledge of it. If there's anything or anyone specific you want to talk about, just let me know, and we'll. Yeah. But I'm just going off, things that I've had on my mind lately. What do you really think about the Iceman's real body count? Like how many people? We all know his claims, but what do you really think? What murders do you think he was involved in, and what do you think he was just fabricating?
This is the biggest myth about the mob, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and these are people that when I talk to them, they don't know a ton about the mob. They know who Al Capone is or something like that.
Yeah.
But I constantly see it. Richard Kuklinski, one of the biggest mob killers ever.
Yeah.
Richard Kuklinski was never connected to the mob, ever. He had one run-in with Roy DeMeo, and it was a bad run-in for him, if you know anything. And Jeff Canarsie, who does a great job on his own show, he's talked about that. And he talks about Roy DeMeo being a serial killer. That's what he was. Roy DeMeo was a deranged psychopath who would jab somebody with cyanide and AIDS, and he enjoyed killing people. He's a John Wayne Gacy, Jeffrey Dahmer type of killer. He's not a mob killer. He had no connection to the mob whatsoever. That is the biggest myth I've ever seen in the mob circle. You go on some of these goofy websites and you'll see Richard Kuklinski, one of the biggest mob killers. As far as body counts, I don't know. There are things that I do believe that he did, like that story that he, somebody looked at him wrong or something and he killed them. Did he kill Robert Pronge and people like that? Yeah, I would say maybe 10, 20. But none of them are mob people. He didn't kill anyone in the mob. That's a complete farce.
What about tying up the guys in Bucks County in the woods and letting the rats eat them alive?
Yeah, that was proven
to me as complete bullshit.
Yeah, that was proven. And look, I'll admit the interview he did with Park Dietz, the psychiatrist, fascinating, right? Because he talks about it so easily. I walked up to this guy and I jabbed him in the neck and I cut his throat. It's simple to him. And
Yeah.
Did he do some of that? Yeah, probably. But he's been proven to be. He said he killed Joe Gallo. He said he
Yeah, I
killed
know.
Jimmy Hoffa. I mean, he's a mental case. He's a
Yeah.
lunatic.
Yeah. He was a psychopath, but he was a terrifying guy without a doubt. Um, Back to, if you don't mind me asking, just because I take a lot of interest in it, and I know my subscribers do, because a lot of my subscribers came from Jimmy Calandra's channel. I don't
Yeah.
like ever telling any of his stories for him, but what do you know about those guys? Maybe like specifics on maybe Fabrizio. Is there anything, any other knowledge you have rather than what's just out there?
Yeah, I think a lot of the knowledge that's out there. They're a group that I think, as you said, up until the Nat Geo show, they were kind of a group that you maybe heard of just a bit. They were what I call a farm team for the mob, right?
Yeah,
And in the '90s, you know all about that. They had these groups of kids. A lot of them grew up in the neighborhoods that are policed by the mob, Bensonhurst or Bath or wherever. And the Bath crew worked directly for Anthony Spear. They were doing pieces of work, bank robberies, drug deals, all sorts of stuff. As you know, I don't have to explain that to you. Now, there were people and things that they did that were particularly ruthless.
yeah,
Now, look, we have to talk about this: the murder of Judy Shemtov at a home that they did.
yeah,
Tommy Reynolds, in a drunken stupor or a cracked out stupor, killed somebody. And that's something that he's doing 50, 60 years on, and he'll get out when he's an old man. DeFranzisi, he was a lethal lunatic. They all were. Joey Calco, Paciello, by the way, was not part of that group. And Jimmy,
yeah.
I'm sure will tell people that. Paciello was a fake Italian. He was not really Italian. It was called Ludwigson. That was his real name.
German.
And he ran around with that crew, provided him some info. He was the one that actually gave him the bullshit info about the safe in the Shemtov house.
I know.
They have to live with that. And some of them ratted, some didn't. I know Joey Calco, he cooperated. He's, somewhere in America. I know he got jammed up a couple of years ago did you hear about that?
Oh yeah. Oh, I did a video on the night of the calzone. Yeah.
Yeah, beat the guy up at the pizzeria. But yeah, I know a lot about. There's a guy in that area. He kind of ran around in the same circles, I'm sure. Michael DeRosa. I don't know how much you know about him.
Flat top.
Mikey Flat Top. Yeah. He was kind of an interesting cat. He got in some beast with Greg Scarpa towards the end of Greg's life. But yeah, the Bath Avenue crew was the farm team, and obviously Paul Galino was the head chief of everybody. He ends up kind of ruining everything because he pushes Anthony Spiro on the sidewalk, and they have to put a couple hot ones in his head. But yeah. They were gruesome. They made money. They robbed a lot of banks. They did a lot of things. And, probably one of the more successful farm team groups. I don't consider the Westies a farm team. They were the Irish mob. They were their own.
Yeah.
When it comes to mob circles, Bath Avenue was we're pretty high up as far as the little farm teams.
Yeah. Now, Chris Pacello, yeah, like you said, he was actually one of the new Springville boys, I believe. And
yeah, he's a bullshitter.
What do you mean, as far as what?
Well, just the shit he says now. He says all sorts of shit now. He's down in Miami living the life, moving around South Beach, and he was able to kind of skate out of all that stuff. He doesn't really take any heat for anything.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about, because you got to admit, out of all of them, even though he wasn't part of the Bath Avenue crew, just being around them and being part of their story, he's without a doubt the most fascinating character, because he's like he basically started the whole nightlife in Miami, and he really built it like Vegas was built. He really
and I think there's one thing about Chris Paciello that I will say I guess if there's anything to respect about an individual like him, he has pretty much moved on with his life. For the most part. He says a couple of nonsense things occasionally, but there are a couple informants, i.e. Paciello. Michael DeRosa is doing a nice job with his life from what I understand. John Beasy, a couple of these guys have done okay with their lives. They're out in somewhere in America doing what they have to do. And Paciello, you're right. I mean, there's a documentary out there. It's an older one. It's probably was made in the early 2000s. About his bar hopping and kind of owning clubs. He's rubbed shoulders with J-Lo and all these different people. And
he did more than rub shoulders with her.
Yeah, that's true. I think he dated her at one point, frankly.
Yeah.
He's completely remade his image, and you know, I've always found it interesting that no one's ever really called him out on it either.
Well, what do you think about the whole story about the basketball game and Joey Merlino?
Do I think that happened?
Yeah.
No,
No, of course not.
of course
I'm
not.
sure they saw each other, but I don't believe for a second that Chris Pacello said, I'll knock your fucking teeth out and all that.
Listen. I've lived in this area my whole life. Okay, I lived in Philly for years. Joey's a sports guy, right? He used to go to Flyers games. He loves Flyers, loves basketball, loves football. He loves that stuff. Would it surprise me if he saw Joey at a game? No. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people a year go to basketball games.
Yeah.
But no, I don't believe that little confrontation happened.
No, people who don't like Joey Merlino love to say that, though. Oh, Chris Pacello punked him. No, he didn't. I would put money on it that he didn't.
Listen, did he yell from the stands and maybe Joey heard a bit or something? I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. I don't think. But I'll ask you though, like if Pacello is so tough and so hardcore, why doesn't he? I mean, I've never seen him say anything about anybody. You would think he'd be out there telling his story. He doesn't seem to say anything to anyone about anything.
I think that's the thing about him that I give him credit for. Like you said, he moved on with his life, but I think he's so aware of how he struck gold and hit the lottery in life that he just figures, let me stay out of all this horse shit and keep these businesses growing and my empire growing, because he's a multi-millionaire.
It's not a bad idea. And look, I'll be honest. I think if Chris went up to Joey, how the hell would Joe even know who he is?
I thought about that too. I don't think
every messed around with those guys.
Yeah, I don't think every mob guy knows of every mob rat, especially with how many there is out there. And it was Philly, New York, two different things. So I don't know, because Chris Pacello isn't really one of the. It's not like he's Sammy the Bull. I mean, he's not one of the most well-known informants out there.
No, he's ask anybody that's really kind of even connected at all to this genre or knows anything. Probably a lot of them don't even know who he is. They maybe know of him because of that. Even in that documentary, like they didn't really talk much about him. So, he's a guy that I don't think he would even know, to be honest. If you ask me if someone knows someone, I would say no.
Yeah. Going back to a name you mentioned, because this is another one, like I said, a lesser known guy that also has kind of a fascinating story. And there's a lot of controversy on whether he was made or not made or could have been made. John Veazey, because his story is another one that I'm interested in and always was.
Well, he was definitely made. John Stanford made him for sure.
That's what I said.
And a lot of people wondered about that because John Stanford was straight from Italy. John came up under Angelo Bruno. He was in the car when Bruno got killed in front of his house on 10th and Snyder. Yeah. And, a lot of people always viewed Stanford as kind of an old school guy, lived by the code and whatever. And then he makes a guy that's half Italian, right? John Veazey was not full Italian.
Yeah.
But John Veazey in his, and I, like I said, I've lived in South Philly before. I know a lot of people down there. I know people that knew who John Veazey was during the time, and they said, and I've heard this before, at the time, there was no one tougher in the city than John Veazey. No one, at least in South Philly. And John was around doing things. He ended up, though, going a different way. And look, John's done a lot of kind of fucked up things as well after his cooperation. He's been kind of taunting a lot of people in Philadelphia for a while. He's been out in the middle of the Midwest somewhere. And from what I understand, he's done okay. He's a car dealer now. He sells cars. He does quite well. But he still comes back to Philadelphia. I remember a couple of years ago, he went down to South Philly to one of the local corners, and there was a newsstand that's owned by somebody down there. And, he put his middle fingers up and was calling them on voicemail and threatening them. He's a guy that I don't know if he's reformed. Is he gotten past all that stuff? I'm not sure.
I wonder I don't know if you saw the interview a long time ago he did where he's in the working out in his garage and stuff.
Yep,
and he still wants to kill these guys because of his brother and stuff, which is understood.
Look, Sicilian, this is a guy that was shot multiple times in the head and survived, and he fought 2 attackers off. I mean, that's not a lot of people could say that, right? I mean,
tough as nails.
that's some really tough shit, man. But and this is a guy that had a tough life for sure. I always laugh. John Veazey made a comment one time that he started killing on behalf of John Stanford for money. That was the reason he started doing it. He killed all these people, and he made a comment. He said, "I never got the money. I never got anything out of it. I just started killing people, and before you know it, I'm in a crime family." And he was the chief enforcer for that crew during the '90s, and it was a bloody bad time in this area. I mean, there were shootouts on 76 on the expressway. There was all sorts of stuff going on.
Yeah, I think they said the first time they offered him to do a hit, they offered him $300.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, and look at the time. John Veazey, he didn't come up real well. His mother was a drug addict. I mean, she was she struggled. They all struggled. Him and his brother, and yeah, I mean, his brother always tried to keep him out of that life, I think. And sadly, they end up getting to his brother. But yeah, he's an interesting guy. I would love to down the road speak to him and kind of understand him and why he does the things that he does, because he still has obviously a lot of animosity and a lot of issues towards people.
Absolutely. Southie 31 says Philly has a history of making really questionable guys, and that's what I was going to say. There was an argument on I don't remember if it was Gunner's chat or somebody one day about how he can't possibly be made because he doesn't have an Italian last name. I think they're forgetting that the same guy made a cop, an ex-cop, Ron Previty. You know what I mean? So yeah. I don't think they were being super picky at that time because of everything that was going on.
Yeah, they call Ron Previty the fat rat down here. He's a guy that I've read. He had a. There's a book that George Anastasia wrote. Funny enough, I know he's written some questionable books in the past.
One in particular, yeah.
Yeah, he wrote a book called The Last Gangster, which is actually one of his better books. He used to write some really good stuff, and there was a part of the book about or Mob Files, or one of them about Ron Previty. And Ron was a guy that was a cop. He then goes to the Tropicana down Atlantic City, starts as a security guard down there, starts to make a ton of money stealing stuff out of people's rooms and selling it on the street. Before you know it, he's moving around with connected guys, and we all know how it all went. But yeah, it is a city that does have some questionable people around it. Roger Vela is another one. If you know anything about Roger Vela, he became an informant years later. He ran around with some people. Yeah, Philly's an interesting place, but it's a family and a group that you will never, ever, as far as the core people that allegedly are involved in it, you will never break, ever.
Yeah.
Ever. They're friends. They've been friends the whole life. Not ever going to happen.
Yeah, I believe that. Yeah, without a doubt. And shit, what did I want to ask about? Something specific in there. So it was something somebody brought up the other day. But what do you think about right now? What do you think about the state of what they're doing? Because obviously they're laying low and they've been trying to get into some legitimate businesses and stuff. But what do you think about where everything stands now? Because I think Joey Molino, and I don't like talking about active guys, but I think he is now off house arrest and stuff, I believe.
According to sources, he is. Listen, I think if you ask anybody that especially him, he's done a lot of time, man. He's been in this thing a whole long time. You look at his father. His father was involved, years ago, and I think he's got kids, a wife. I think I would have to think he's probably just gonna try to chill, I guess. Try to get into something cool and find something successful for himself. I don't know. I don't know what he does on a daily basis, but I think he's a guy that we'll hear from pretty soon at some point. I would have to think. Who knows what he'll end up doing? I saw an article that he might do a podcast. That's what I saw. I don't know how much. I don't know how valid that is. That's what your buddy put out, Stratweiser.
Oh God,
those two. But Philly's an interesting place. That I will say, and I wanted to ask you. I don't know how much you know about Philip Leonetti and his behavior.
A lot.
We did a show on Nicky Scarfo, and I did it with the guy Scott Bernstein, who I respect. He actually wrote the book about Phil Leonetti, Mafia Prince, and I hit him with a question, and he didn't quite know how to respond. But I always was fascinated to wonder. Let's say Philip Leonetti and his good friend Salvatore Testa, who were young up and comers, what if they would have banded together and said, you know what? Let's take out my uncle. He's a fucking nutcase. Let's get rid of him. It wouldn't surprise me if Salvi Testa was still around. I mean, Salvi was a guy people respected. Philip was okay with standing in the back shadows. I think Salvi would have been a fascinating leader, and it would have been interesting to see how Philly would have shook out because, when Nicky Scarfo took over, you can make the case he's the worst boss in the history of this thing.
Absolutely.
And he killed a lot of people. He wasn't willing to listen to reason. He enjoyed killing people and really unnecessarily did that. And I always wondered what if Salvi would have acted and said, you know what, I'm going to do my thing and I'm going to act on what I want to act on and become the boss. His father was the boss at one point. He was a respected guy. So it'd be interesting to figure that out.
Well, that's the thing. I think part of the reason I know that there was some beef over him not marrying, was it Chucky Merlino's daughter that he was supposed to marry?
Yeah. It was Joe's sister actually.
Yeah, so
they had the wedding set up. Yeah.
Yeah, so I know they say it was about that and some other things, but I think a lot of it was about the fact that Scarfo feared that because Salvi Testa was so well respected and he was so well spoken of in newspapers and in media that I think Scarfo did get a little fear that this guy could take over. I think there was even talk of that. And I think that if he would have killed Scarfo, especially if he teamed up with Leonetti, they absolutely could have taken over. Their only problem might have been how New York decided to handle it. But
yeah, and I think New York really back the whole way to Caponegro with Bruno. I mean, they really played Philly, Chin Gigante and some of the people up in New York. They played Caponegro to believe that, to get Bruno out of the way. They ended up killing him, and they could kind of install who they wanted down there. That's a good point. I think, though, at certain points, they had to realize Nicky was an unstable nutcase. But he was doing some good things in Atlantic City. He obviously did some really high end things down there at one point when gambling was legalized and everything. And I know at one point he sold some land to Mr. Trump at one point, and Philip has talked about that. Philip's an interesting guy. He's a guy that he won't even show his face. I mean, he's really out. And he's done some decent interviews recently, but yeah, I think he was a guy that really probably should have went another way in his life. I don't know if he was cut out for that life. I think he just only knew of Nicky as a father figure, and Nicky's kid actually ended up killing himself over it. If Mark Scarfo, his son,
hanging himself,
yeah, he hung himself because of the pressure that his father had, and Nicky Scarfo Jr. is in prison currently, for that First Plus scam that he did a couple of years ago. So, yeah, Nicky ruined a lot of people's lives in his family.
Yeah, and Leonetti, I'll tell you what always struck me about him. In almost every interview, he will talk about, I believe it's his current wife. He had killed her ex-boyfriend, I believe. And
go ahead.
The way he talks about it, when they're like, do you feel bad? And he has this very odd inflection and stuff when he speaks, and he's basically like, about what that I killed him? No, it's just such an odd thing.
I think his whole thing is like I know what you're talking about. It was the Vincent Falcone hit, I believe, over in Margate. And I think Phil will make the case that he was just there. I think a lot of people have to understand though what murder is. Murder is when someone dies, and it doesn't matter if you pull the trigger or not. If you're there, that's murder one. Okay. And Phil, I think, doesn't quite understand that, but he had, and that was kind of a real bullshit thing to do, I guess. But hey, if they're happy, so be it. But yeah, Philip, I'm not sure what he's still scared of at this point. I guess he thinks that he's in harm's way, but yeah, Leonetti is a guy that, he's no different rat-wise than any of the other ones.
It is funny though that he plays it so low and hides his face and stuff. Because at this point, let's be honest. I mean, these guys don't even leave their neighborhood anymore after they cooperate. It's unbelievable.
I always got a kick out of his that he did an interview years ago where he did show his face. I think it was ABC News maybe, and he had that wig on. Did you ever see that?
And the mustache.
Yeah, Canarsie calls it that Frank Vincent wig. He did look like
Yeah.
Frank Vincent a little bit. I always kind of kick whenever I see that. I get a kick out of that because he always has that wig on. But I wanted to answer something. One of the commenters talked about that Mafia Made guy.
Yeah, where is that? Can you pull it up if you see it? Or
Yeah, it might have been far back. I don't know. I somebody mentioned it. I forget where I saw it, but I wanted to talk about that because I keep seeing that guy around, and I
yeah, me
saw him.
too. And I'm curious about him, so feel free to.
Well, I saw he did an interview actually on the same channel that John A. Light did an interview on recently, the MCMS or whatever it is.
MSCS or yeah.
Yeah, this Kawuchi. I have to say I've never seen someone like him in my life. And I talked about this on Lee's channel. As I've said, I'm in the middle, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I do not agree with any of these rats and what they did. I think it's vile. They didn't want to go to jail, so they cooperated and tattletaled and everyone else. I think it's vile stuff. All of them, though, were involved, right, in the life at some point. We can't argue with that. Gene, Jimmy, whoever. This guy has never been involved with anything. He truly makes this shit up.
That's what I wanted to ask you. I tried to look him up. Like, what is he exactly? He's just he's like me or you, right?
Yeah. He just sits there and tells stories. Listen, I consider myself, I'm not a foregone expert. I think I know a lot. As I said, I think my goal is to know more about some of even the smaller guys that maybe people don't know of. I've never come across this individual ever.
Me neither.
There's one thing about him on the internet that he had some sort of loan that he gave out to somebody, and that was it. But there's nothing there that makes me ever to believe he was involved. And I think it's just him drinking a little too much scotch at night and telling tall tales.
Yeah, and the whole thing with calling Sammy to Central Park and all that is very odd stuff. And people ask me about him all the time. And, I'm in a position where people always want me to call people out and, talk shit and embarrass them. But I don't just pick people, off YouTube and start doing that. I just don't know what to say about this guy because he appears to be a regular guy who is pretending to be part of something. And I'm sure I'll hear about this, but that's what I take from it. I think he has a book out though, doesn't he?
I guess I don't know totally a ton about him, but yeah, he's a guy that I think is a total bullshitter. And again, I couldn't care less. I speak in fact. I've never heard of the guy.
He said, I'm sorry.
I've never seen anything.
He said on one of his shows about could Sammy call up Made Guys and to get in contact with me? No. Could I call up Made Guys to get in contact with him? Yes. And I'm like, okay, first of all, even if that's true, why did you just say that? Like, why would you mention that you're in contact with current Made Guys? We're on YouTube.
Yeah, I don't I didn't listen to that full interview, obviously, that he did on that channel, but it's a sad thing that I think he got someone to believe that nonsense. I guess he created a name and says he knows people and people just believe it. And that's kind of the sad state of where some of this stuff is now. But yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, it is. Now I know you don't want to get involved. I'm not going to try to involve you in anything, of course. I don't,
like I said, I don't mind talking about anything. Again, I think I'm not on this platform as far as I'm not involved with I know there are guys that have pages that expose people. Like I don't do that kind of thing. My show is about history. And I will say, eventually I'm going to do a show on Sam Gravano. Okay. Yeah. He was part of the mob. It just is. I can't not talk about history and not talk about him. I just can't. Yeah. Right. Occasionally I've talked about John A. Light. We talked about him with some of the things that he said recently, news and stuff. You can't get around some of these guys. But I think for me, like I said, I don't agree with what they did, right? Any of it. But you can't not say they weren't part of things and they weren't in things, right? So, I don't mind talking about it. I just choose not to. I don't know John A. Light. He doesn't seem like a great guy, but did he do things? Yeah, a few. Do I think he's what he says he is? No. For me, I'm Albanian, right? Does he Does it bother me that young Albanian kids flock to him like he's something? Yeah, it does. I think he's a scoundrel, if you will. But I also will say this, and I'm not in this group of pages or whatever. If John A. called me and said, "Hey, I'd like to get interviewed by you," I'd interview him and I'd ask him the tough questions,
That's what I
questions
was
that
going.
a lot of people won't ask him. He
Yeah.
needs to answer for his behavior, right? And I think a lot of these guys just give him these softball questions, and they gallivant around and act like he's this and that. People need to ask him questions. The same as anyone. If I talk to Sammy Gravano, I would have a really good conversation with him. I respect any man as a man, but I'm going to ask him questions that I think he should answer.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't want to answer them, then that'll be made clear. But I think people need to ask him about that stuff.
Absolutely, and they never do, but I'm sure that's a condition, of the interview before it even takes place. What I was going to ask you about, yeah, you said earlier you were catching up on some of this stuff. What do you think? I mean, have you been following any of the drama on I call it MobTube now? Have you been?
Yeah, I always am fascinated by the internet and what it can produce, right?
Yeah,
Just some of the stuff, you see kids now that make these goofy videos on the internet and they become super famous, or, you see a video go viral and you think, how did that go viral? And then you look at the mob, the mob history and stuff, and you see pages that are dedicated to this and to that. It's interesting for sure. As far as Lee and some of his stuff that he's done, and I told Lee this, and I'll say this publicly. I think Lee needs to either be a history and have a good time at the internet, or he's going to exploit people. Because I think some of his people that follow him are going to say, well, I thought you didn't like these people. Why are you all of a sudden cool with them now,
yeah.
But, Lee's a nice guy. He's always been nice to me. Same with Kane, same with you, all of you guys. I don't know some of you that well. I've seen all the pages, though, and I'll never tell another man how to spend his time. It's not something I would do, but it's definitely interesting.
Wildly entertaining, right?
It is. I mean, I get a kick out of some of this stuff, and I also get a kick out of some of the informants that have channels now, and them going back and forth with each other. I get a kick out of Gene Borello. I think he's hilarious. Some of the shit he says, because it's almost like he's, I don't know, disillusioned, maybe. I don't know. And I've said before, Gene is a tough guy, man. Gene messed around with some tough people.
Yeah.
Ronnie Giolans is a tough dude. Okay.
Yeah.
But Gene is they're all interesting. I'll give them that. And not interesting in a good way.
What do you think about? I got to mention my favorite page, and I'm surprised he's not in here. Mob Rats Exposed. Have you checked out any of his stuff?
Yeah, I've only come in recent contact with him. I saw he did something with Lee the other night, and I don't know him, so I'm not going to contact and talk about him. I have nothing bad to say about him. I mean, I think he has a lane that he stays in. I know in kind of my line of work that I have every day on Twitter, the gambling community. I get why he doesn't want to show his face, but I also will say, I don't know. I think you should be upfront about who you are, but I get it. I don't know much about him, though. He seems pretty funny, though, as far as, he doesn't seem like he's a guy that's going to go and target someone's family and stuff like that, which he seems to have morals, which I respect a lot. And yeah, it's definitely an interesting group of people for sure.
Yeah. Definitely. This is it's a whole world that's opened up here, and it cracks me up because somehow I've landed myself dead center in the middle of it. And every day now it's like I used to be into politics, so every day I'd wake up and be like, "Oh, what did Trump say today? Or what's going on today?" You know what I mean? Like now I wake up and it's like,
you want to see that?
Yeah. Like I could binge watch this shit all day. Like what do they say? Who's fighting with this one? Who's fighting with that one?
And I saw Mob Rats. I saw he did a show. I guess it was yesterday, maybe, or today, where he had Jeff Canarsie, Chris Casparosa,
yes,
and some chick. I don't know who the hell she was, but yeah, it's a compelling, weirdly compelling thing that you want to check out. I also get a kick out of just Lee, like him going from one extreme to another, and I think he's funny personally, Lee. I think just stuff he says, and he calls his channel a station, and he's just kind of an old school guy. But
Yeah.
I don't know, he's just funny to me. But someone said, "Why do you have to share your face?" You don't. I guess in the world that I'm in, I do show my face just because I don't have anything to hide on who I am. But I get it if you don't want to. I don't think
Well,
it's
I think
not
it's
a priority.
also because I think people forget, like you probably don't know as much about him, but like my subscribers know. I think people forget that Mob Rats Exposed is his job is to like not his job. He doesn't make a living off it, but his purpose on YouTube is to be a troll. He has other channels where he trolls people.
I will
So
say, and again, I just want to make this clear. I'm very upfront. I'm never going to hide how I feel. I don't respect those type of people personally. Who are you to throw stones in a glass house?
yeah.
That's how I kind of look at it. But and I've had my own run-ins with people that have really been just vile to me on the internet. But I've also realized that I also don't really take him that serious either. And I think Mob Rats Exposed, when he called Lee Uncle Jr. the other night, I thought that was funny. You got to laugh at it, and I come from a world where for a long time it bothered me. And then I worked for a company where you had to be, thick skinned and people are going to talk shit and you kind of just take it. And now I laugh about it. You see people calling you this and that, and it's just funny. So,
Oh, I get it. I get it
they
constantly.
don't seem, some of them don't seem like, I think Mob Rats is a guy that just has fun. This is the thing he does as his hobby. And is it an interesting hobby? Sure, but it's what he likes to do. So.
Well, he's the perfect guy for it. That's what I love about him, with the voice and the sense of humor and the clever jokes, the catchphrases that this guy has made up. I mean, stuff like that is so hilarious to me. I'm just a fan. And like I said, that's the one reason I understand him not showing his face because, he trolls a lot of people. So if this is the thing he does, he has a family, I'm sure. And some of these people are vicious, man. Like I'm hearing more about the stuff A-Late is willing to try to do to people. And so, I can understand.
But yeah, I think it's, and I said this to Lee and I'll say to you, as much as these people are people we want to put in line, I think when you really look at where I'm coming from the history side of things, most of these guys are extremely inconsequential to anything that ever happened. So when you look at mobsters like, Carlo Gambino or Tony Accardo or Tony Salerno, I mean, to call these guys mobsters, I mean, it's almost a slap in the face to people like that were actually, I mean, they made history. They did things that changed the course of history, right? And to go from that to some of these guys, it's pretty embarrassing, man. It really is. And I would always just say, I'm not going to spend time on people like that just because they're just really not that important at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's what aggravates me about certain people who use the term "in the mafia." They say I was in the mafia. I think people forget that technically, and not even technically, if you were in the mafia, it means you were a made member.
Yeah.
The people, the bit players and stuff, the associates, they're not in the mafia. They're a part of it, of course, because associates play a big part. They always have. But, I hear that so much from guys. I made a comment about A-Light. He said I was the Donald Trump of the mafia. And I said, no, you weren't even the John A-Light of the mafia. You know what I mean? You weren't.
Yeah, I mean, John was, he wasn't made, and he knows
Wow.
that. He was an associate, right?
Yeah.
He did things and he moved around. And, I am going to go against Kasparov a little. Do I think he went to the Ravenite? Yeah, I do. A lot of people pass by the Ravenite, though. I'm sure in the 80s, if I really wanted to, I could probably say hello to John Gotti if I wanted to.
Absolutely.
Do I think that John A-Light sat at tables with him and talked business and he ordered him to go do things? No, I don't. And I think that's, if you believe that he did, I think you're crazy. Did people and him in that organization have relationships? Yeah, I think he knew people for sure. But
absolutely,
to accentuate and try to say you were better than you were, whatever. That's kind of, I think, where people have a problem with him. And I think also some of the behavior that he's put out recently with the baseball bat thing, listen, it's not because you played baseball, right?
Yeah.
We all played. I played Little League when I was a kid. I'm not going to sell baseball bats on the internet because of it, though.
Yeah.
And I didn't play college, but I mean, he didn't play for Vanderbilt or Texas. He played for some D2 team. I don't think
Yeah.
he even played that much.
No, and for all we know, he never even went to college. I mean, these are all things that I can't figure out a way to prove. So, you got to take everything with a grain of salt. But
Yeah,
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 I don't.
he's a trip. I'll give him that.
Yeah. If anybody's got any questions, if you want to do a little Q&A here, Jeff knows more than I do. So if
Yeah,
you guys,
I'll actually quickly, if we get in the other ones, I'll address this guy, Babs. I see he's been in here the entire time.
okay,
I think his goal, he's one of my trolls, I think, on Twitter. I think his goal is to get a rise out of me. He's upset that I'm in the sports betting industry and he isn't. So again, thanks for watching, brother. Thanks for coming in and supporting the channel. Make sure you give Fatball Sicilian a subscribe, Babs. That's all I'm going to say to you.
yeah, if you don't mind me asking you about that,
Yeah.
your whole, I mean, if you don't want to talk about any of it, that's fine. But
No, don't mind.
and I understand you worked for Barstool Sports and all that. And what is your expertise in sports betting and all that stuff?
Yeah.
And what was your role in Barstool?
Yeah, so I've kind of been in the universe of Barstool for a while. Currently, I'm kind of just doing my own stuff, but I've been there in the past. I kind of specialize in certain sports, college basketball, the NFL. I've been gambling forever. I got into the content business a long time ago, 2010-ish, around that time. Got on Twitter, started to build a following, started doing some content, kind of like this, yet on different offshore companies. Kind of made my way through the business, and down the road I made a connection with some of the people over there, and I was there at some point and worked. But I've been in this sphere of sports betting for a long time, doing content and things like that.
So if I ever decide to start betting on sports, you'd be a good guy to ask for
Well,
picks.
listen, there'll be a lot of people that tell you I suck at it, but my genre of expertise is I'm particularly strong at just understanding the game of basketball and understanding all 357 teams in college basketball. And it's kind of my forte, if you will. I had a show at Barstool called Big Men on Basketball. My name gambling terms is Big Men on Campus, and I made it Big Men on Basketball. And they gave me a podcast, and it was 3 days a week, and it did well, and we were happy with it. But yeah, I think I could probably help you for sure. Am I good? Like I think sports betting is tough. It's a hard business to make a living at. There's a lot of people that say they do and don't. I luckily have been able to do content, and companies will kind of pay me for some of the things that I'm willing to do and will do. So yeah, I think I could give you some pointers for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. I won't be doing any gambling for a while, but if I if I get back to that point, up until a few days ago, I like to go to the casino from time to time. I'm a roulette guy,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I never got into the sports betting much.
Yeah, it's a business that's changed a lot. I mean, when I first started doing it, there was no casinos you could go and bet at. Now I can open an app on my phone right now and bet legally. So it's definitely changed.
Isn't it fascinating now that you can walk to a gas station and sit down and play slots and drink and everything else? It's
You
terrible.
can. You can. It's definitely wild for sure. I didn't think I'd ever see the day. There's shops all over the place you can bet at sports at now. In Philadelphia, there's 2-3 different casinos. There's casinos, out in the suburbs now, and yeah, it's crazy. It's a new frontier.
Yeah, I went to River Casino, I think.
Yeah.
That was the worst
In
casino.
Philly,
Yeah.
I'll tell you a story about that place.
Okay.
When that place opened, it opened, I think, in, I don't know, 2013, 2014, around then. And I lived in Philly at the time. And I remember I had a friend of mine who used to go there late at night and play blackjack, talking 3, 4, 5 in the morning. He'd go there and play. And there was one night where he made a lot. I think he made 10, 12,000. He leaves, goes home. And as he's walking in his house, parks his car, walking into the house, he gets robbed.
Oh, Jesus.
Of the bag. And the guy takes the bag and his phone. He calls the cops. They trace the phone to the guy. That quick, met the guy where he was going and got all the money back. But my friend said to me, he goes, yeah, but he goes, and I don't even know, it might have been just south of 10,000. It was right around there. And he says, but now I have to report it because it was in the paper. They put it in the paper. And yeah, that's what they were doing. They were sitting on people at that casino up in the Northeast, and they were following people home. That was a big problem up there for a long time. And they still do that stuff. I mean, that's a shitty casino for sure. They still do kind of stuff.
You know what it reminded me of? I'm going to tell you the truth. It reminded me of, you ever see National Lampoon's Vegas Vacation?
I have, yeah. It's a good
when
movie.
Clark Griswold goes in the casino, and they have like pick a number and guess what's in my hand.
Oh yeah,
that type of shit.
Yeah, that like yeah. It was that low budget casino. Yeah. It kind of reminds you of that, right?
Yeah, it was like I sat down to play roulette, and I think it was a $15 minimum, and they're telling me you can only play nickels on the inside. Yeah. I'm like, how can you only play nickels with a $15 minimum? I never heard of such a thing.
Yeah, it's definitely it's not a bougie casino, put it that way. It's definitely a casino that they just threw in the middle of an urban jungle and said, okay, have at it, and it's a wild place. I don't go there too much. I go to Philly Live now. It's a better casino for sure, but
yeah, I haven't been there for as close as I am to it.
Beautiful, man. You should check it out. It's really nice.
Yeah, I go to. I was going to Hollywood from time to time.
Oh yeah, that's out in the middle of nowhere. That's like a prison, kind of. It's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, absolutely. But that one's okay. There's a smaller one too, in outside of Ocean City, Maryland, Ocean City Casino. That one and Mount Airy, a casino and resort in the Poconos.
Up in Poconos, yeah.
Yeah, that's my favorite casino. I love it there.
Yeah, interestingly enough, back in the day, kind of relating it to organized crime. Obviously, that area was policed for a long time by Russell Buffalino, but Big Billy D'Elia, who kind of took over that family after Russell went away, I know he was connected for a long time with that casino, Mount Airy. They don't talk too much about that, but somebody says John Elite had 300 people in his organization.
Where do you see that? That's on here?
Yeah. Elite had, Brooklyn 718 says A-Light had 300 men under him. LOL.
I gotta find this and put it up. He's joking. Okay, if he said LOL, okay. Yeah, all right, yeah, because later on he said A-Light lives in Fantasyland. Well, he said stuff like that. I don't want to keep you on that subject, but I mean, I don't know if you saw the thing about how I put it up the other day. It's from JohnnyLightFacts.com, where he talked about, and he testified to this, that he was making $10 million a year. He had 150 guys working for him in the drug business. And when they asked him what a kilo weighs in court while he was on the stand, he said a pound.
That's funny.
Could you imagine you're a kingpin? Because I'm sorry, if you're making $10 million a year, I don't care where you are. You're
I think if you're a kingpin, like he alludes to, you should know the difference between a pound and a kilo. They're pretty different as far as the amount and everything. It's not even close.
That's what I said. I needed him as a connect when I was on the street, because if you're going to,
you would have made a killing.
Yeah, if you're going to sell me a key for the price of a pound, I'll take as many as you can sell me.
Hey, think if Kabani Savage got a hold of John A-Light.
Oh God, can you imagine?
What do I know about Kenji Gallo? Not too much. I mean, he's pretty inconsequential. He was part of the at one point he was a drug dealer out in LA, and I think he ended up testifying against Teddy Persico. I think I don't know exactly. A friend of mine wrote a book about Kenji Gallo, but pretty inconsequential as far as I know. But he had some connection to the Columbos back in the day.
Yeah, I got to shout out. I got to shout this person out, Jarrett Ackerley. I know this person. I appreciate the super sticker, and I'm glad you're watching. I hope you're enjoying the show, and I will talk to you later. It's not too often there's someone I know in here, but
that's nice of people doing that. Shout out to you. I think you'll get back on your feet soon, man.
I appreciate it, and I want to give Jeff a thank you for earlier. He actually sent me a donation through Cash App, and I appreciate that. Anybody who's doing that, like I said, it's hard for me to take anything from anyone. I certainly won't ask anyone for anything, but I know what you guys have been doing since you heard I lost my job, and I appreciate you doing that. Everybody who's sent a super chat or any donation through Zelle or Cash App, I love you guys for that. That's very kind-hearted of all of you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
luckily, the good thing about, I guess, if there's anything good thing about your situation, it is a pretty okay time to find a job right now. Nobody wants to work, so
yeah. Until that extra unemployment runs out, it's a good time to look for a job.
yeah,
Once they take that extra 300 a week away, nobody's getting a job. They're going to be
yeah, yep.
there's going to be 1,000 applicants for every business.
That's the thing. I think if you want to get a job, you might want to do it now. If you wait a month or two, it might be a lot tougher. Stugatz is asking about the Tanglewood boys. Yeah, they were, recruitment team, kind of like Beth Avenue. They did a lot with the Lucchese's. They were out of Yonkers. I know Stephen Crea got his start at one point. Stephen Crea Jr. got his start in the Tanglewood boys. Yeah, they did a lot of shit, little scores and selling drugs, bookmaking. They were young. They were a young group of kids. Hung out at a shopping center up that way.
Yeah, I didn't know that actually. I thought Stephen Crea was. I didn't know he was. Was he from Yonkers?
I think he's from the Bronx, Stephen Crea Jr.
Oh, I actually thought he was from Brooklyn. Let me call out the super chat. Thank you, Will. $5. Jeff, do you expect Genovese to remain strongest family in New York City?
I've always said this. That's my favorite crime family to talk about. I've just always been so. I mean, we're doing a show on Tony Salerno this week. Really looking forward to it. When you just look at the amount of money they made, I mean, Tony Salerno was making in the '60s. He's making $400 million a year.
Yeah.
I mean, Vincent Gigante. A lot of people don't know much about Matty Ianello, the horse. He literally controlled Times Square at one point with all the vice and prostitution stuff and porn and all that kind of stuff. Quiet Dom Cirillo, Ciro Perone, all these different guys that were doing stuff. I've always found that, even from Lucky Luciano on, as far as will they be, they're the Ivy League of crime families for sure. Are they the strongest family to this day? I'm not in the mob. I can't tell you that. But do I think they're still strong? Yeah. I mean, the guy that is said to be in control is the guy you want in control. Put it that way. I would think so. You just look at kind of the ascension of that group. Genovese's have always been, to me, the most interesting. By the way, did you hear about Chin's brother?
No.
So Vincent Gigante's brother, one of his brothers was a priest, Catholic priest.
Yeah, I know about that.
He ended up being a councilman. He got jammed up last week, according to an old report. Supposedly he was sexually abusing boys. That came out last week. So,
oh wow!
Allegedly, we don't know how true it is, but it came out. I saw in the New York Daily News.
Wow. I got a question about, since we're talking about the Genovese family. I don't know if you've heard me speak of it, but I had my grandfather was very close. Well, actually, lifetime friends with a guy named Fritzy Giovanelli.
Mm-hmm.
You know Fritzy?
I've heard of him. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's got a very interesting story. I don't know if you know about the two detectives that were shot, one that was killed.
Yeah, the guy Venditti, right?
Yeah, yep, Anthony Vendetti, yep. I was just wondering if you knew anything extra about him, because I always look for news stories about Fritzy.
Yeah, I know he was pretty close with Chin Gigante. He's a capo at one point. It's, he's a guy that there's not a ton of information on. I know he was, I think, close with the Cavalcanti people as well. But yeah, I definitely know the name, and I know he kind of came up with Chin Gigante. We talked the other day on Lee's show. Gene made a comment. This was a week or two ago when he was still doing videos. Gene made a comment that he slapped, quote, Ali Shades. Did you hear about that?
No, I didn't hear that.
So he claims that he slapped a guy called Ali Shades. Now, Ali Shades, if it's the Ali Shades I know of, Ali Shades Malangone was a big earner in the Genovese crime family. He literally controlled garbage in New York. Him and Jimmy Fiala, who was actually at dinner when Paul Castellano was hit out front. He was waiting for Paul.
Jimmy Brown,
Yeah, Jimmy Brown. They were big into garbage, those two. And again, Gene has said, now, if there's another Ali Shades out there, so be it, but that never happened. Gene never slapped Ali Shades Malangone. He's an old timer. You're not going to slap him and get away with it.
You're not buying that one?
Of course not. Unless there's a young Ali Shades, a street guy Ali Shades. I don't know.
Well, I have to bring it up then. What do you think about the other slapping story? The John A. Light slapping Gene Gotti and sending everybody else to slap Gene Gotti when they were in McKean.
Well, I'm not gonna. I guess I'll just say this. Look, I have a dear friend that's in federal prison. He was at McKean for a long. He's been in McKean. He's been at Farrington. He's been at all these different places. Um, that would have been something that he would have probably alluded to me at some point about. I've never heard of that story, and I don't think he'd ever did that.
Okay.
What do you think would happen if he did that? Because I mean,
they'd still be looking for him.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. He was a simple associate, and you're talking about not only a captain in the Gambino family, but the boss's brother. You know, it's just ridiculous how steeped the Gotti family was in the mafia and how powerful they all were at that time. Any made guy, it's ridiculous to say that you slapped him. But Gene Gotti, I mean,
literally ask Paulie Galino about slapping people or pushing people that you shouldn't.
Exactly.
That goes to show you what really happens to someone that does that.
Yeah,
there are rules.
And you know, we're talking about the early 90s here. This is not today when you know there might be a no-kill thing or whatever. They would kill you in a heartbeat.
But yeah, to answer your question, no, I don't think that ever happened.
No, absolutely not. No.
Of course not.
You see any other questions you want to take on here?
Yeah, there's always, there's a lot of good stuff in here. I want to say this about the community out there. A lot of people that know a lot about this stuff.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
My subscribers are pretty well informed. I love that I have the people I do because they always come up with good questions and stuff.
Well, here's what we'll do. If you have a question, ask it now. That way we don't get it lost. Was Gene made before John? Yes. Oh, you mean A-Light or Gotti?
Gotti.
Okay.
I think Gotti, yeah.
Yeah, I guess you never know anymore because some people believe that Gene. You don't remember though. John A-Light knew Albert Anastasia. Remember, right? He actually killed Crazy Joe Gallo. By the way. You ever hear of? I want to ask you. Do you ever hear this Johnny Russo talk about?
Oh,
isn't he a trip? That guy.
Oh my God! I listened to him one day at work. I always had my earbuds in. And I listened to him on Vlad, and I was like, "What the fuck is he saying?" That is just comical, though. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I think he believes a lot of the stuff, honestly. Like he made a comment that he, and he's also talked about the Marilyn Monroe stuff. Like he had sex with Marilyn Monroe when he was a kid.
Oh yeah.
And it's like when he said it happened, he was like 15. She was like had just gotten married and like she was out in LA. Like, why would she have ever crossed paths with him? Like,
oh, I know.
But then he says like he killed, like he was almost kidnapped by Pablo Escobar at one point, and he's a lunatic. That guy. Johnny.
Did you hear the part where he said, I think he had been molested or some other kids were?
And he killed the guy in the bathroom. Yeah, the doctor. Yeah. Or something.
I love when people listen. A lot of people can make a lot of claims that are just unverifiable, or you at least can't prove them wrong, even if you know it's bullshit. But when people talk about murders, I've said this about A-Light. You can't just start saying you killed people and not have names. Like bodies don't just evaporate.
I don't think he knows either that like there is no statute of limitations to murder for Gianni. I don't know. He shouldn't be going around saying he killed people, regardless of what they did to him.
Yeah,
but yeah, he had polio and he was like in the hospital for like 5 years, according to him. And then he left the hospital and started working for Frank Costello as an errand boy, and started doing all this stuff. And let me ask you a question on the informant angle.
Okay.
Have you ever come across like a likable informant, like that you like listening to?
Yeah.
Because I always found Frank Collada to be pretty interesting.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I always found him to be somewhat interesting. Obviously he was an informant, but I always found him to be kind of interesting.
Yeah, and well, that's the thing too now is it's become such a fashionable thing now. Like it's so acceptable that these guys were informants or rats, whatever you want to call them, that they're the stars now. The Sammy the Bulls, even the John A. Lights. These are the people that everyone not only accepts what they did, but they love them. They latch on to them, and some of them are likable. Like I'm not going to lie to you, I could listen to Sammy's stories. I don't, necessarily like Sammy, but I can listen to his stories all day long.
I find Jimmy to be pretty likable, also.
Oh, of course, Jimmy. That's Jimmy helped me get started with my channel, and I was so interested in that Bath Avenue crew story that I was thrilled when he finally came on YouTube. So yeah, till this day, as soon as I get a notification that he dropped a video, I love listening to him. And fortunately, I get to speak to him from time to time on the phone and stuff, and he's a good guy. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely found him to be interesting. It's funny too. I watched that Fear City documentary. Have you seen that? And like the first 10 minutes of it, John A. Light's talking about in the 70s, quote, we controlled everything. What were you, like 10 years old in the 70s, John? What are you talking about? We controlled everything. You didn't control anything.
Oh, I know.
He's talking about the disco era. It's like, bro, you were 14. What are you talking about? What? And that's where, like, that's the thing. Like, if you just do a simple check of how old John is, he was like 16.
Yeah.
You were at discos with mobsters, John. Like, what are you even talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. When he talks about, we were making $1 million a month in drugs just in the clubs alone. And I'm like, what the fuck? Is he kidding me? The oldest he could have been in 79, the end of the 70s was maybe 17. It's such a ridiculous thing. And that's why, I was so hyped up and excited about Fear City when it was announced that it was coming out. Once I saw them constantly go into him, I just couldn't watch. I haven't made it yet through the first episode because the fact that he's taken seriously saying shit like this just tells me that, I don't know.
Well, and then you also have on the other end, you have Michael Franzese, who, Michael can say whatever he wants. Michael talked to the police like he did. Like, and he doesn't want to ever come out and say it. He did Vlad TV. Like the first time he did Vlad TV, and Vlad asked him about it. You're an informant, right? And he goes on this like long-winded answer about how he's not a rat. And it's like, well, did you inform on anyone? Yes, Norby Walters. Why don't you talk about it? Like he doesn't. It's weird. He doesn't want to like admit it.
Yeah. I've gotten into this argument with people a million times. People will say, oh, John Gotti Jr. was a rat because he sat with the FBI and did 302s, whatever. But those same people will argue that Michael Franzese was not. I'm sorry, but if you do that, yeah, you were absolutely a rat. I mean, Michael Franzese, I got nothing against the guy, but he was a rat. You can't say he wasn't. You know what I mean? It's you've even heard, I saw one of those, I don't know if it was 10 Commandments of the Mafia or one of those documentaries he basically starred in. And even the FBI guy that was talking was like, yeah, he just got to the point where he couldn't take it anymore and he cooperated with us. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's it.
I just think he was, I mean, and like, let me ask anyone out there that follows this or anyone that knows anything about this kind of stuff. With all the things that Michael did, don't you find it crazy he just got out of prison? Like, I mean, come on. Let's be honest.
Is that not
if that were any of us on the street, we would all get life for some of the things that Michael did. Michael literally defrauded the government. There are people in prison for, like, from a white collar standpoint that did far less than what Michael did. Bernie Madoff got a life sentence, literally. Like, let me ask you, who defrauded? I guess Bernie probably defrauded more people, but they're kind of on the same level, aren't they?
Well, yeah, because, and I think it's definitely worse in the government's eyes because Franzese defrauded the government. Right. The government doesn't care about individuals like
regular people.
Madoff
right.
did.
Sure.
But Franzese defrauded the government. And I even heard an FBI agent speaking once about how part of Franzese's deal was that he had to pay back something like $30 million. And they said he never even came close to paying it back. But yet he still walks freely. I can't, when I'm on probation, if I don't pay $1 back on a fucking fine, they'll put me back in jail.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And by the way, someone says nobody went to prison because of Michael. That's not true. Norby Walters did. Look it up. Norby was in the sports business and Michael cooperated against him. This is that simple. And I know we don't want to admit that because Michael is like an upstanding, he's a nice guy. Seems very good. He's another good guy. He does a lot of cool stories. He doesn't really get too deep into things, and that's fair. But he needs to kind of be and call a spade a spade. He definitely He definitely did.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Someone asked about Ori Spotto. Do you know anything about Ori? Or
I just know about his connection to Sonny Franzese, and I
right.
know
And he was in an indictment with Sonny, and I'll tell you what, he had a funny rant about Michael. Did you ever hear that rant? He went on about Michael.
a while back. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Why would I use his fucking name? And yeah,
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 yeah. He went nuts on Michael. He doesn't like Michael too much, but yeah, there's all sorts of interesting cats out there, man. You know, they all have a place in history, I guess.
yeah. It's and that's the funny part. I said this to my wife recently. Why this is so fascinating, because I grew up on this history of this stuff. I was raised on it. I had family members that were connected, and they pounded this shit into my head. I never thought I'd see the day where we would even be having this conversation where we could click off this video right now and go find 10 different made guys on here talking about their past crimes and beefing with each other, and the absurdity.
And I'll tell you what, Sicilian, like I don't this is just the beginning of it. I think you can look at someone like Sam, right? Gravano.
Yeah.
I mean, everything he makes off YouTube is legit. It's legit money. It's taxable income.
Yeah.
He can die with some money that he made, and he's telling you stories, and I think that's something that down the road people are going to look at and say, I can make a lot more money off just telling my stories. And I've been arrested for all this stuff. I've done time for this stuff. I'm just going to talk about it. I'm going to make some money off it. Well, I don't think it's going anywhere either.
No, oh no, it's just one more incentive to flip now, to become a rat, because it's like, look, I could do a couple of years,
or just leave the life and just start talking about your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially since nobody's afraid anymore. It's not like they even worry about witness protection. So yeah, you could just quit the mob tomorrow and hop on YouTube and make a legit fortune. I mean, I can't even calculate in my brain what Sammy and Michael Franzese must be making, but it's millions.
Well, look, I've been in this game like on the internet for a while. I would probably have to think they're making tens of thousands a month.
Oh yeah.
I mean, off subscribers alone. A lot of them have Patreon pages, merch. They're getting paid to do interviews. I think one person, Sammy, is willing to sell anything, and all of it came out, so he has nothing to hide. I think Michael will have some trouble down the road just because I think there's only so much he can talk about, and you can only review the Gotti film 10 times, before it gets old, right?
Yeah.
Someone says Big Tuna has to be the greatest of all time. I agree. Tony Accardo is the greatest mobster ever. If you look at mobsters, he was king. He was the king. He's on Mount Rushmore for me. But a lot of smart people in these chats, man. Smart people.
Yeah, there is. That's why I always like to take comments and stuff. I'm looking for specific questions if they have anything.
I got a kick out of somebody said John A-Light's mother made him chicken fingers or something.
Yeah, that's a thing. Like I said, this is the brilliance of Mob Rats Exposed. He has
is that one of his things?
Phrases. Yeah, he always talks about, because it came out that John A-Light lives with his mom. And that's true.
Is it?
And yeah, he does. And so Mob Rats Exposed started this thing. Mom, where's my tendies?
Now, let me ask you: does she live with him or does he live with her? Because
him and his
like maybe he has a big house and she just lives with him.
No, him and his brother both live with her.
Okay.
And yesterday, when Jimmy A-Light was on Lee Cole's show, he didn't say directly they live with her, but he said, we do live together. It's in a house. It's like 2 separate apartments. One's upstairs, one's downstairs. So yeah, they live at home. I mean, that hasn't been disputed as far as I know.
I remember a couple of years ago, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I don't know if you've ever seen it. There's a video, an Albanian rapper. Have you ever seen the John Elite video?
John Alida. Yeah. Oh,
I think I'm John Elite.
Yeah.
I tell you what, that's when I truly believed that this generation is, or just the times we're living in, are truly wild. Oh. That a rapper will go to someone like him and like celebrate him. It's almost like Tekashi 6ix9ine, right? So like. Oh. There are people that will like knowingly celebrate a guy like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, how is a man whether you're in that, I'm not a mobster, right? I'm not a gangster. I don't do anything criminals, but I also have a moral. And I say, if I do get in those things and I get arrested, I got to pay the piper, right?
Simple as that.
How is like a human being can you co-sign that shit?
Uh, I always said the same thing. And the funny part about what you said about, people that praise Tekashi 6ix9ine, one of them, believe it or not, is John Alite. He did a show about it, and he talked about what a smart kid he is and what he's doing is the right thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean, did you ever think, you got a picture of Biggie behind you? I'm sure you're probably around my age. Did you ever think in your lifetime you would see the rap community accept somebody who did what Tekashi did? But he's still selling records. And
well, and I think what's even sadder is the ones that don't accept him, that ostracize him, they're almost looked at as not cool or not popular, right?
yeah,
And it's like, I don't know. It's crazy to me. And I'm not going to relate this to like whether it's right or not to do what this guy did, but there's a guy in Philly, A.R. Ab. He was a rapper.
oh
He
yeah,
recently got 45 years for
yeah,
selling drugs. A.R. Ab could have went to the feds and said, look, I want to cooperate. He just took the 45 years. He'll
yeah.
get out when he's 65. I look at someone like that and say, well, you got to pay for your crime, but hey, at least that's a stand-up thing to do. You took responsibility, right?
Yeah.
He's not as popular as Tekashi 6ix9ine is.
No, hell no.
Like, that's crazy to me. Like, it's a shame. I think it shows where our the generation behind you and I, it's concerning to think about.
Yeah.
To be honest.
It's scary. I can't believe it sometimes. It's like I'm in bizarro world. Everything is reversed. Nothing makes sense. The stand-up guys are looked down upon. The rats are looked up to. It's so strange. But like you said, I always, I have a criminal record and I was involved in a lot of stuff in my life. And I always had a theory. Anytime, when I was selling drugs, when a guy above me would offer to front me, a half a key, something like that, no thank you. Very simple. I would do the crime I was able to do the time for.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to do 30 years, so I didn't do crimes that could get me 30 years because I never wanted to be in that position to really have to decide, do I flip or do I go to prison for the rest of my fucking life? You know what I mean? So it's like everybody knows what they can handle, or at least they think they do. If you're going to be a criminal, stay in that lane. Otherwise, this is what's going to happen. You're going to be shocked when you get caught, and then you are going to wind up telling on everybody.
Yeah, it's kind of like pretty simple. I don't want to go to jail, so I don't sell drugs or kill people.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's not that hard of a concept.
Yeah.
It's and if, as you said, if you can't handle the issues that you're going to get because of what you're doing, you shouldn't do them. And that's where, for me, like these people that cooperate and stuff, I just, it's not something I would do. I saw a question here. Do I believe John Gotti was? I don't know. I have no idea. Listen, there were definitely people doing that, selling drugs in that family. Did John? No, I don't think he did.
What did they ask? I didn't see it. Did they ask?
Somebody said, did I see John knowingly involved? Well, listen, Angie Ruggiero was definitely doing that kind of stuff. His brother Gene went away for that. So
yeah.
I think everybody, look, all those families were involved. Paul Castellano took drug money from people. That was why he was killed, ultimately. It's hypocrisies. Angelo Bruno was killed because of that.
I was going to say, Angelo Bruno was, he had a no drugs rule, and he was the biggest, at least profit-wise, he made more money than anybody in Philadelphia.
He was taking money from the Gambinos in Cherry Hill, over in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And, that's hypocrisy at its finest. I heard a wiretap one time from a guy in Cleveland, and they were talking about how Angelo Bruno's wife could write a check for $5 million if she wanted to, while his subordinates, their wives can't write checks for $5, $10. Like, that was the hypocrisy of what Angelo was doing. He was taking all this money and he was sitting fat on a hill while, and Paul did the same thing while everyone else starved. So it was, the mob has always been involved with drugs for sure. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, to ask, people picture drug dealers as, it actually passing through their hands. Did it pass through John Gotti Sr.'s hands? No way.
no.
But did he take the money? He couldn't not have taken the money. I mean, that's where a lot of the money that these made guys and associates make.
Yeah, I don't think you're ever going to turn money away, but you're not going to ask where it comes from, right?
Exactly. They just turn a blind eye to it. Some of them, know about it and are willing to let their guys do it. But for the most part, back then, no, he didn't. He could just turn his head and just accept whatever was handed to him.
A great story about that, like just taking stuff from the people that give you stuff.
Yeah.
I heard a story one time. Do you know who Jack Falcone is or who he was?
Actually, no, I don't think so.
Jack Garcia. He was an undercover FBI agent that infiltrated the Gambino family in the early 2000s. He was a Cuban guy. He was an FBI agent, kind of like Donnie Brasco did. And he started moving around with Greg DePalma, who was a capo in the Gambinos up in Westchester County. And he talked about a story one time when he was getting hijacked loads of stuff.
Yeah.
And they came across some hijacked TVs, plasma TVs. And the boss at the time was Arnold Squitieri. And DePalma reported directly to Squitieri. So Jack Falcone, the FBI guy, gives Squitieri a TV. He just takes it, doesn't ask where it's from. And one night, DePalma's at home. And he calls Jack Garcia and says, "Hey, this TV you got, is it hot?" And he goes, "Of course it is. I'm not going to buy him a TV and give it to him. Of course it's hot." And he goes, "Well, listen, he said get over there and get that fucking TV off his wall." He was watching that Sopranos and saw that episode about Feach LaManna with the TV.
Yeah.
He said, "Get that TV off my wall now." And I always think of that story about where gangsters don't really ask where the money comes from.
Yeah.
They just take the envelope.
Yeah, of course.
And I always think about that, the thought of that guy sitting there, an old school gangster watching Sopranos, and thinks that the TV he's watching is hot and to get it the hell out of here so he doesn't have to worry about it. I always just found that funny.
That's a trip because that Feach LaManna setup, whoever, David Chase or whoever wrote that was brilliant because they figured out a way to take him out without killing him. They just sent him back to prison. They gave him a truckload of TVs, put this in your garage, and they called it
and that's the thing about the show. Like, I always wondered, I think if you know anything about informants, you've got to agree that Tony Soprano was a rat with some of the behavior that he did.
Yeah.
I mean, keep in mind, he informed on a couple different people.
Yeah, absolutely. He was informing on the Muslim guys.
Yeah.
He was telling
informed
FBI.
on Feach LaManna. Like,
yeah.
I mean, again, like, call a spade. Like, Tony was a great character, but you could agree he was a rat.
Yeah, well, that's the funny thing. I think what they hit the nail on the head on, because they did on that show a lot. A lot of people don't like to admit it or face it, but a lot of these guys aren't above using those methods to get rid of their enemies. You know what I mean? That's a big thing in the drug world. Drug dealers set up other drug dealers all the time just to get rid of competition. So that to me was a brilliant scene with Feach LaManna.
I did. Dan, can you highlight Danny F's comment there?
Let me find it here. Let me see where he's at. Kabani?
No, he said, "Did you say Fat Tony was making $300 million a year?"
Let me see where this is. I'm all the way.
Just a little, but yeah. Listen, again, in the '60s, it was 50 million was the equivalent of 300 million at the time with inflation. So yeah, he was. I mean, he was making a ton of money. And I know I think you're just having a little fun time here with the A-Light stuff. Yeah, A-Light was making that kind of money, by the way. Fat Bolts is saying. Did you know that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
300 million, yeah.
Yeah. He was making it per day, actually. I don't know if you know. That's another thing I posted a thumbnail on one of my videos. And this is part of his testimony. People think that I made this shit up or I just pulled it offline. But he said in court testimony that in the 90s, in the late 80s, early 90s, him and John Gotti Jr. were running a coke and heroin ring, and they were making $10 million a day. Could you
I
imagine?
mean, no, I can't. The fact that he even says that stuff is crazy to me. But then again, he didn't know the difference between a kilo and a pound. So I really find that hard to believe.
Yeah, he's not real good at math, from what we know. So, Johnny says Luciano set up Genovese in the drug bust in '58. What is that? I don't know anything about that.
What, Vito Genovese getting deported or leaving the country, or what do you talk? I see some of these people. I don't know if they're just having fun
I
or
don't either.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm sure he's probably fucking with us because I don't know anything about that. You see anything else on here? We'll stay on a couple more minutes and then I got to get going. My wife is probably ready to punch me in the face.
Yeah, she's ready to hang out, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, she's got to get up early. Unfortunately, I don't have the burden of getting up early right
Yeah, you don't
now.
have to get up early right now.
No, I could just stay up all night on here. Shit.
That's funny. Ray Schultz elite whacked Phil Leotardo.
And then the truck ran over his head, right?
Yeah, he actually did that too. He was in the car.
Yeah. Fucking A, like, yeah. Every time he talks, his body count goes up.
By the way, do you think Tony Soprano died at the end of the show?
Honestly, yes, I think he did.
You do?
Yeah.
Wow, really?
I don't know. It had to be.
You really think they would have killed him in front of his family?
See, I don't know because the reason I go, the reason I say possibly is only because things have changed so much, and the time that took place, that was what, 2010.
Yeah.
Nothing would really surprise me. Probably not. I mean, I think if anything, he got arrested. It was the feds that came in.
I definitely think that's believable because at that point he was screwed with the Carlos stuff for sure. I guess my whole thing was when you say about he died, I guess my whole thing would be who would have killed him, right? Because Phil was dead. New York had made peace with Tony about killing Phil, and they were okay with it because that guy Butchie took over. Who would have killed him?
Well, I didn't trust.
My thought would have been maybe Patsy and Paulie, maybe.
Maybe I didn't trust the sit down with Butchie. I had a feeling that was a setup. You know what I mean? So I almost
he
feel
would have
like
became boss then. Do you really think he would have went back on his word with that? I think he would have wanted to assume responsibility. Phil being out of the way was good.
Yeah. I don't know. I the one thing that tipped me off when you look at all the little clues in that last scene was the guy coming in with the members only jacket on. And you know what scene that's from?
I think the one thing that gave it away that Tony survived and he probably went to jail was, I think it was season 1. He made a comment about if he didn't have kids, he wouldn't care what happened to him, right?
Yeah.
Or he made a comment about, I just need to see my kids grow up and then the feds can do what they want with me, right?
Yeah.
AJ at the table makes a comment about remember the good times, right? And I think at that moment he realizes my wife is happy, my kid is happy again, my daughter is happy, and if they take me away, so be it. Maybe he had accepted that. I don't know. I don't think he died. I think that's crazy to believe, honestly. I just don't think with the show that good, I just don't think you would do it because that never really happened outside of Joe Gallo. So I don't know. It seems hard to believe.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll never know for sure, but I guess there's some brilliance in David Chase leaving that ended.
Yeah, because we're still talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely, and we will be forever because that show is timeless. You know what I mean? Like people will be watching that.
Like whacked out Tony.
Hey, like whacked out Tony. Look at this. I'm sure. I don't know. This. There's talk of, and I have a hard time believing it, but it would be a dream come true that there's a possibility of Mickey Featherstone giving me an interview. Now, I highly doubt that that's a possibility because he could be paid a fortune for an interview. But could you imagine what that would be like to be able to get an interview with Mickey Featherstone?
Yeah, I mean, Mickey was a wild guy. I mean, he's in his 70s at this point. I don't know where he is. I don't know what he's doing. I think, to just put this plainly as you did, I feel like if I'm Mickey, I would probably aim a little bit higher than to talk to me,
Yeah,
or to any of us, but because I think you would probably get money for that. But that'd be fascinating. I'd be interested in hearing about it. Jimmy Coonan's still alive, actually. So
yeah.
that
I
would
mean,
be.
I know this guy and I trust his word and stuff. I know he works for NBC and they getting something together with Mickey. But it's like you said, it's not necessarily that I don't believe who's telling me this. It's just that I can't figure out why Mickey Featherstone would give me an interview. But I'll tell you what, if he ever did, holy shit. That would be, I don't think he's done an interview in like 23 years.
Yeah, I would be interested in hearing what he has to say. I mean, maybe he's realizing that he can make some money off of his story for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I love the story of the Westies. They got a very fascinating history, and I don't care. I just want to see whatever interview he does. You know what I mean? Like Mickey Featherstone is a legend, even though
Yeah, he did some things for sure as far as in that bar and stuff. I could have sworn I heard he passed away, but I could be wrong.
No, he's
I
still
don't wanna-
alive. I think he's 73 now. I don't
Okay.
know I don't know as far as his health, but this says rumor was Mickey
Yeah, there you
died
go.
some years back. I mean, I guess anything's possible. I mean, who knows? I
I
don't
mean,
know.
it's tough because you wouldn't really know, right? I mean, he's not really out there and stuff. I know one of the rat channels said that Frankie Loke died, which is not true. Frankie Loke is not
No,
dead.
no, he's still. I'll tell you what. He probably wishes he did at this point. I mean, he's been in there for what now? 30
I
years.
will say something from what I've heard. There's some really great mob content coming out over the next couple of years that's in the works, from what I've heard.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is it? It's not going to star John A. Light, is it?
No,
Everything
no.
else does.
They're going to be original pictures, from what I understand, like original shows, like
Oh,
created
good.
shows, and interviews and things of that nature. So I think that's funny. Sonny from A Bronx Tale was John A. Light.
Yeah, that's
Some of these
hilarious.
people are funny, man.
Yeah. See this right here, DL and Brock. He says, "I don't know. LOL. David is a funny guy, but he's got 2 hours and 47 minutes, and they're trying to edit it down.
Who's
What that
David?
is?
David Chase?
No, David is a guy that's on here. I don't want to, just in case he doesn't want me to say his name. He had hit me up on here like a week or so ago and said that he did an interview just recently with Mickey Featherstone that was hours long. But who knows? I don't know who the guy is. See, that's the funny thing about this. I've come in contact with doctors and lawyers and people that, executives, people that have worked for all kinds of networks, as far as they say anyway. That's what they say. But so who knows? You never know who's on here watching. That's the crazy thing.
You really don't. You really
No.
don't. I remember the first time I got a message from Dave Portnoy. I thought it was a fake account
I
on
bet.
Twitter. And it wasn't. It was obviously him. But yeah, you never know, truly.
Yeah, that had to be a trip.
Hey, there he is, Lee Cole, the third.
Lee Cole. Thank you, Lee. I appreciate that.
Lee Cole. My man.
Yeah.
There he is. The man, the myth, the legend.
Yes, sir.
And Lee's a good sport, though. Lee's a good sport. He had a tough last couple 24 hours.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. I don't like to see it too much. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I'm not gonna lie. I'd be just bullshitting if I said it wasn't, wildly entertaining. I listened to that whole thing again today while I was shaving and shit. I just can't. And like you said, it was wild what wound up happening. I mean, Chris Casparosa and Jeff Canarsie, this little thing Mob Rats Exposed did on doxing turned into this battle royale. Like it was. Same thing happened on Lee's show the other night. Lee was doing a show, and all of a sudden I hear Mob Rats Exposed voice, and I was like, "What just happened?" What the fuck? And I was
all
really
these guys, man, are funny. I mean, whether it's Jeff Canarsie or Lee or who, they're all very entertaining for sure.
Yeah, they are, man. That's what I love about this whole thing. You're joining YouTube at an excellent time.
Well, I don't put a ton of time into it. I have a little few ideas for things I'm going to do, but I guess the goal with my show is I want to take it to a big place and get it, created on a bigger stage and maybe try to interview some of these people.
Yeah, yeah, why not? There's definitely some people I have in mind, ones that I actually think I can get. You know what I mean? That I want to. Oh, and Chris Casparosa did agree to an interview last night. So, considering what I spend a lot of my time talking about, Chris will be a good guest for me to have on. But yeah, I want to do interviews and stuff too, without a doubt. It's just a matter of getting started on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're a nice guy. I like talking to you. You know a lot, and you have a good group of people here, and looks like you're on your way. So, um, yeah, that's a good point, Brandon Bell. That's a great point there.
What do you say?
Go ask Alex Rudai what he thinks about A Light.
Who's that?
Alex Rudai was he controlled the Albanian mob in the '90s, and he once
Um,
told, uh, basically told the Gambinos to go fuck themselves one time. He was a tough guy. He's been in prison a long time. They were tough people, the Rudai organization. So, yeah, that's a pretty good point there.
yeah, that's another question I have about this whole thing. How does and we know about him getting beat up outside that club and stuff, but how do Albanians handle the fact that this guy pretended to be Italian? I mean, that he and still, let's be honest, still does.
I've seen him on interviews like in Albania, like on the news and stuff, and
Yeah,
I don't think anyone ever really even talks about it. I think he almost says he's Albanian, so he doesn't. I don't think they care. I think they just are happy that he's involved with them and stuff. I don't know if they actually know what he actually did. And he uses that whole, well, they were going to rat on me, and he uses that whole thing. So I think they almost kind of generalize it and act like it's okay. So
I
I think
guess.
it's pathetic. But
Somebody said in here Billy Beatty would be great. Yeah, that's another one. I would take a Billy Beatty
I think
interview.
Billy Beatty passed. As far as
Yeah, I
I know.
think he did too. But any of those guys, you know what I mean, that are still alive. Um, all right, guys, I think we're gonna shut the show down now. It's been an hour and 41 minutes. I want to thank Jeff for coming on. This was actually great. We got to talk about some good stuff, and I enjoy that because this is my. I have such an interest in this stuff, and you have a wealth of knowledge. So I want to thank you for coming on, and hopefully we could do it again.
Yeah, I would love to, man. You, like I said, you're a great guy, and I think you're gonna continue to kind of rise up and do your thing, and stay out of the bullshit. I think you do a pretty good job of that, at least for the most part. I think you just sit back and watch it, like
Yeah,
I do.
yeah, that's my
Uh,
position.
yeah.
I'm
So thanks,
Switzerland.
everybody on here. You guys are cool, and I enjoy talking to you.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming. I will be back with tomorrow, not tonight. Tomorrow at some point. I'm free all day, so I will be. I'll be on with a video on something. I'm not sure what yet, but I will come up with something. And oh, Will, let me get this one. Will said, Jeff, do you see the Patriarcha family as almost non-operational under the cheese man Carmen D'Annunzio?
I always found him to be an interesting guy, Carmen D'Annunzio. Yeah, as far as the patriarchal crime family, that's something that I would definitely jump over and talk to Jeff Canarsie about. He's very in tune with that group. He knows a lot about them. Providence is not the same as it once was, so there's definitely a big decline with the patriarchal crime family. Do I still think they have some people out there? Probably. But Boston's pretty much a small city, even at this point, under the cheese man. So, yeah, I would probably say so.
All right. Well, thank you for the super chat, Will. Yeah. So, like I said, guys, I appreciate Jeff coming on. I will be back tomorrow, probably in the afternoon. And until then, I will see you guys then. Jeff, if you want to stay on for a minute, we'll
Yeah,
talk
sure.
backstage. All right.
You got it.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night, and I'll see you tomorrow. Salute.